11 for the dead last. Unheeding of the pouring rain keeping sensible souls warm and dry indoors, Denton and Shio dragged Haruhi across the village anyway, through winding streets to the very opposite end of Konoha. I don't know, guys, Haruhi said when they reached the entrance to Konoha Cemetery. We should go. Come back a day it isn't raining. No, it must be now, Denton insisted. Why? They'll still be dead tomorrow. Shio glanced over with that concerned expression again. Haruhi wasn't making a joke. It wasn't flippancy. It was mere fact. Since we'll be in class tomorrow and unable to go with you, I know you won't go, Shio said over the pattering rain ricocheting against their umbrellas. Spring had arrived grey and wet this year. Just like you haven't gone any other day. Your actions speak for themselves, Haruhi. And insanity is repeating the same actions over and over expecting a different outcome from it. And I'm not insane. So I know you won't go. Not without our initiative. Besides, you heard what Mum said. It'll be good for you to see where they were laid to rest. It's part of the healing process. Right. Haruhi nodded without listening, reluctantly following her friends up the path. But it's raining. What idiot goes to the graveyard in this deluge? I mean, except that guy. Haruhi gesticulated towards the only other person in the graveyard, standing by a memorial for Konoha ninjas who died in the line of duty. The ninja looked over when they passed. His grey spiky hair drenched so wet it bent flat against the masked face. Had he been smart, he'd bring an umbrella. But if he'd been smart, he'd stay indoors to begin with. Good day, sir, Denton waved politely. Disinterested, the ninja was about to turn back to the memorial when he halted, focusing on her scar in ways she hadn't had to deal with in this life until recently. Haruhi pulled up her hood, tilting her face down. Damn, take her ugly-ass scar. It had been easier before, when growing out her bangs was enough to hide her lightning bolt scar. Now she'd have to buy herself a face mask like that ninja was wearing. I don't see why we can't come back on a day the weather is nice too, Denton suggested. You should go more than once to tend to the graves, or they'll get neglected. Haruhi shrugged. No, she didn't want anything to get neglected. But simultaneously, Haruhi had her hands full with the Uchiha district. That's where the ghosts of the lost community lingered in the slowly deteriorating buildings. The stained porches, the overgrown lawns, taped off police station, unnoticed leaks in pipes causing water damage, and empty stores. For each week of postponed upkeep, it grew visually more like the neglected part of Soraku, while only Sasuke and Haruhi remained with a cat. Fools would rather live with the bitter ghosts of the past than start anew in another place. Shio and Tenten didn't get it, and Haruhi hoped they never would. But for her part, whatever was here in the Konoha graveyard, it was just stones. They'd reached the Uchiha plots of the graveyard, made distinct with a handful tall, rectangular stone monuments engraved with family names. Each represented a different family lineage within the Uchiha clan, though there were a couple more now than Haruhi recalled. Had Konoha not known who everyone was related to? And with only Sasuke to ask? No, he wouldn't know that for everyone either. Is this the one? Shio and Tenten had gone straight to the biggest. This stone is for the Uchiha line of Izuna? No, Haruhi said. Even if her mum could have been part of the line, she was by birth, but tradition favored her being placed with her husband's line instead, and her dad had been of Kagami's line. Haruhi went over to the right stone. Is that the one? Shio asked, the girls coming up on each side. Haruhi nodded. What now? She changed her grip around the umbrella handle, his inability to leave making her fidgety. Tell them something, Denton suggested. I tell my grandparents things when I visit their graves. What I'm doing, what Mum is up to. I think they're listening. They're not, though. If some spirit went through the hassle of lingering behind, of all the things to come look at, some dull graveyard visit wasn't of interest. You're just rambling aloud to dirt, stone and ash. What was that thing Shio said about insanity before? Tenten huffed, and Shio straightened her glasses. Their bodies aren't in the same state anymore, true, but their spirit is more aware. Not the way you assume, Haruhi grumbled. Their souls had likely moved on to the next great adventure, not really themselves in death. If they weren't reborn already, or become part of that thing Holly had never quite become, they'd just be drifting spirits. Maybe life wasn't fair, but neither was death. If you don't think their spirit can hear you and won't speak to them for their sake, then do it for your own spirit, Shio suggested. At least we know that one's here. I guess. The space between life and death was hard to comprehend, and Haruhi couldn't quite grasp what she'd been through in that void. In purgatory? Haruhi couldn't name it. What she gathered was enough to know there wouldn't be any warm fairy tale reunions. Death was a construct beyond any of them, and they'd all get lost in it one day. Haruhi had postponed the inevitable, but in those early weeks after waking up from her coma, after returning to a world so different from the one she left, she really couldn't understand why. Thinking constantly, why had she fought for life again? If life was a game of Quidditch, Itachi'd played a foul on her. Like a teammate flying up from behind to hit her with a beater's bat, taking her unawares and knocking her clean out of the air. Without anything to cushion her descent, Haruhi crashed headfirst into the ground, while her broom went flying off into the Whomping Willow and smashed to splinters. But the game didn't stop just for her sake. No one blew the whistle. The game remained in play. But what about her? With her support shattered and body broken, all Haruhi could do was painfully limp around the ground, watching futile up at the players still going. What had she been thinking? Dealing with Holly and everything lost on the other side of the veil was mind-scrambling. Yet the one thing that could override it, somehow be more dire than realizing she was bloody reincarnated, was learning the full extent of her clan's demise. Then, as if all those world-changing things weren't enough, the cherry on top was fighting with her prognosis. Her head is broken, the medics said. She won't walk, they said. Won't play, won't be a ninja, won't be of any use. What sort of life was that? Fantasies of giving in sounded increasingly reasonable. A solution to end her suffering a tempting proposition. On some of those darkest days, maybe she'd have gone through with it if it wasn't for her physical limitations. Haruhi couldn't get to the window without assistance, and doubted the nurse would help chuck her out. Where was Itachi when needed? The masked man. Instead, it was tempting to stop trying to recover. There were no distractions. She was stuck inside these four white walls, her crippled body an inescapable jail she couldn't find reprieve from. Her only entertainment, her mind rewinding to better times, igniting a yearning that left her hollow. Those damned memories. Why had she wanted this so bad? The fiery rage Itachi's betrayal had ignited, burning so ferociously it followed Haruhi into death, had chilled to ice upon coming back alive, a frost spreading through her veins, turning the pain to a numbness she hadn't known since she was last overcome by a Dementor. Her arms, her legs, Her head, everything was too frail. There was no Madame Pomfrey here to magic it better with a wave of a wand either. No Scaligro, no pepper-up potions. Just a sea of pain, bleak prognoses, grief and simmering betrayal. As far as Haruhi knew, there wasn't a Dementor in Konoha, except the one growing inside her cold, hollowed heart. Why had she fought so hard for this miserable existence? What purpose could she fulfill in that condition? Something had to give. Why aren't you walking yet? Sasuke would nag, the mere sound of his voice above her when all Haruhi wanted was for everything to go away. Have you even set up? Back then, Haruhi didn't want to face her cousin's disappointment with her lack of progress again. Prodding and probing and impatient. Sasuke never said it directly, but she could read it on him. Why won't you get better for me? I am all you have left. She had said something about after everything, Sasuke might not notice if she was gone too, that it would help him, trying to excuse it. But remained silent about the rest, didn't tell the whole truth. It had hurt him. Because you are not enough. It went both ways. They could never be enough to the other. Couldn't take the place of dead parents, her brother, their cousins, grandparents, aunts, uncles, the Uchiha community. But unlike Haruhi, Sasuke could at least rely on his body, could cling to a distant goal of gaining resolution, of revenge, no matter how far-fetched it felt in the moment. She'd had her share of tragedy back in England too, but it hadn't been like this. This was like returning to Hogwarts to find everyone murdered, but not by an enemy like Voldemort. No, this was more as if Hermione suddenly decided, out of the blue, to kill everyone. From the excited little first-year students to the house elves to the staff, even deciding to kill Haruhi too, leaving just Ron alive for some sick game. This had been nothing like facing one of Harry Potter's enemies. The bull-headed bravery that made her stand against Voldemort just got far more muddled when she loved the person attacking her, and Haruhi found it wasn't a clear path anymore. Even now, a part of her was trying to find excuses for how it happened, some reason to explain Itachi's treason. As if there was one, as if anything could excuse this. It was mere lingering traces of her misguided affections clashing with brutal reality. Itachi just wanted to end the Uchiha. She didn't give a shit why. To test his strength? What was Sasuke even talking of? Itachi hadn't gone mad. He was just heartless. Itachi's betrayal wasn't something she'd known back in England. Sure, Pettigrew had betrayed her parents, but she'd never known the Reds personally. He hadn't been her friend, the one she trusted. Even if his cowardly choices had shaped her entire life, it had happened when she was so young and learned about it so late. But now she understood intimately the shock and devastation Sirius must have felt after placing his trust in the wrong person. James and Lily too. Except, Pettigrew wasn't the man who'd gone to Godric's Hollow to point the wand that killed James, killed Lily, turned to kill their daughter. But for Haruhi, that's how this was. Itachi was her Pettigrew and Tom Riddle combined. It was ugly to think back on those first couple of weeks. But at least Sasuke was alive. What became of her mattered to him. And after he said as much, screamed it, Haruhi couldn't pretend he wouldn't notice her absence. And yet, Sasuke alone hadn't been enough. Haruhi glanced over at Shiho. She seriously might have died a third time if someone hadn't stepped in. And it had come from such an unexpected source. Of all things, the turning point came with a transfer of nurses. It wasn't long after Sasuke yelled at her that Shio's mother, Momo, had requested to work as Haruhi's main nurse. It hardly made a difference to Haruhi, so she'd agreed, not expecting anything to change. As it turned out, it mattered quite a lot. No sooner was a transfer approved before Momo barged into Haruhi's room like a whirlwind, pushing Haruhi through her first exercises. Regardless if Haruhi had the will to live or not made no difference to her. The woman was on a mission. Forcing her through it while feigning deaf to Haruhi's tears, screams, protests and curses. It was just as brutal as Haruhi'd known it would be. Had it been easy, it wouldn't have been so insurmountable to begin with. "I hate you!" Haruhi had screamed at the woman, feeling as if she was maiming her worse than Itachi had in those first few days of forced physical therapy. Her head was broken. And no, that wasn't a mere expression of speech. Yet the woman was pushing it beyond its limits. "Go ahead, dear. I can work with that," Momo encouraged. "Hate's more manageable than indifference." "Curse your eyes!" she'd snapped, sweat pouring down her face and body, her head throbbing so bad the room was spinning. The only reason she wasn't on the floor was Momo's arms. Her own weakness disgusted her. She'd gone from doing flips down the entire Uchiha district to being unable to get out of bed. "That's not very polite, Haruhi." "Don't lecture me! You're not my—" But Haruhi choked up. She never was able to finish that sentence. Once she got started, once Momo pushed Haruhi over that first impossible hill and there was some forwards momentum, it became not easy, but a little less unmanageable. It worked out in the end. The hospital was baffled she lived in the first place, but when she started recovering enough to start walking on her own, it actually made them throw around the words miracle. So how come Haruhi was more inclined to call it a betrayal? She couldn't shake the feeling her name was meant to be on this memorial stone too. Haruhi had always belonged with her family, and if they weren't here, why was she? Shio pulled Tenten back. "Come on, Tenten. We'll give you some privacy, Haruhi. Tell your family how you're doing. Tell them what your medic said." Shio and Tenten moved to another section of the graveyard, shooting tentative glances in her direction. She shouldn't keep them. "So, here I am, alive," Haruhi tried, her throat going tight. "The girl who lived again. I guess the joke's on me." The rain had eased up a little. "I live with Sasuke now, Inku too. I moved into Uncle Fukaku's office and Inku took Aunt Mikoto's. It's quite nice, though the house is a bit big, just for us." Haruhi had many good childhood memories of that place, of running around the courtyard with Sasuke, feeding the koi fish in the pond, helping Aunt Mikoto cook, and spending countless evenings eating dinner with them. It'd probably have been worse living in her old house after her parents were killed there. So Haruhi didn't understand how Sasuke could stand staying in the house his brother killed their parents. "Sasuke is a clean freak though. You'd have hated it, Mum. Though I guess that means he's everything you wanted me and Shisui to be, Dad." She kicked a puddle of rain around her feet. "I came from a hospital appointment just now. My medic cleared me, so I'm going back to the academy," Haruhi said, but didn't get further. This was stupid. They just weren't here. Nothing in this graveyard cared what she had to say. Maybe it was for the better they couldn't hear what she said. Her dad had been nagging her for being number 2 in taijutsu. What would he say if he heard about her ranking now? Haruhi reached out, going down the list of names on the stone. Uchiha Kagami, Uchiha Hiyono, Uchiha Junpei, Uchiha Mio, Uchiha Kaji, Uchiha Inori, Uchiha Shisui. She touched the empty spot under her brother's name, a blank space awaiting her name. Some scribbles carved into stone. This is it? How could that possibly be a representative of who they'd been? How could it describe her mother's wry humor or affectionate hugs, her dad's passion for cooking, or his constant strive to take care of them, her brother's infectious laughter? What about this grey impersonal stone communicated what the world had lost? Her face constricted, eyes tearing up. The floodgates opened, and she couldn't shut them. The cool spring wind chilled the salty tears trickling down her cheeks, her face-splitting scar pulling on her skin. Haruhi wanted a time-turner, wanted to undo this, and the fact she couldn't was driving her mad. Unfair, unfair, unfair. This world is too unfair. As Holly Potter, she'd often dreamt of having parents, or for some unknown family relation to come whisk her away from the Dursleys. Then Hagrid came, and more or less fulfilled that desperate daydream. Though more than anything, she'd yearned so badly for what the Weasleys had, only to get it. Because here, Haruhi had been born with all of that. She'd finally had everything, and it was more than she'd understood in her previous life. The Uchiha had been perfect. Sure, there'd been pressure and expectations, but she'd been so loved. Haruhi had belonged with her family, and then her blissful childhood turned to a living hell in the blink of an eye. As much as she'd missed James and Lily, what the hell had she known about loss? That sadness was about missing out, about insecurity and feeling neglected over something she'd never had. But it wasn't grief, because back then she'd never known the love she'd missed out on to begin with. Being told of loss secondhand would never be enough. Grief was like reaching awareness of testals. She had to live through death to see. Haruhi had been itching to start for over a month, but until yesterday's checkup, the hospital hadn't entertained that notion. She still had to be accepted back in her class though. I'm ready to return to the academy, Fununo-sensei. Haruhi sat with her hands clenched in her lap, stomach doing nervous cartwheels, made all the worse when Fununo-sensei smiled at her with pity. She was so sick of that expression. It was always the precursor to something she didn't want to hear. I'm sorry, Haruhi-chan, but I'm afraid I can't accept you. What? But I'm cleared, sensei! You're too far behind. You've missed almost 10 months, Haruhi, and I suspect you're still not fully recovered. I am! The medics cleared my head injury! Sort of. They'd cleared her for light training, with strict orders to avoid falling on her head. Though as far as Haruhi was concerned, her training was a lot lighter than it had been before the massacre. Miles lighter than Sasuke's. And they said I could start using chakra again. In careful bursts, with complete ban to not use her dojutsu. And I can catch up. I've been studying. Shio's been helping me. I'm not as far behind as you think. Seeming unconvinced, Fununo-sensei leaned back in his chair, so Haruhi pushed forwards, getting desperate. Please, sensei! I want to come back! I need this! I'm at home all day training anyway! Living in the Uchiha district wasn't like it used to. The sense of seclusion was unavoidable. It was far from the village and empty. The one and only other person around only came home to sleep and eat. More often than not, Sasuke was here, at the academy, or training somewhere else. I want to come back to the academy! He relented. I'll give you a test to evaluate how you compare to the class. Fununo-sensei allowed, sounding as if he regretted every word. Depending on how you fare, we'll take it from there. Haruhi nodded, clinging to her only hope. The test was a few days away, allowing Haruhi some preparation time. She exited the staff room by a familiar corridor she'd walked countless times before, greeted by the same worn timber frames, paint-chipped walls and timber floors. The only thing that had changed here was herself. Haruhi wasn't the same person as the last time her feet pattered through this hallway, keeping step with Taiko on their way to class. How absurd something so mundane happened hours before Taiko was killed. At least she assumed that's how it went down. Outside the massacre itself, Haruhi didn't remember what she'd been doing in the days leading up to it. Haruhi tried to stay positive, to remind herself she'd come so far, and that she could do this, but the concern lingered. She just reached the exit when a door was pushed open by a group of boys. She recognized them at once, and Haruhi's stomach flopped with nerves like a frog leaping between lotus leaves. Reflexively, Haruhi smiled, the tightening cheek muscles pulling on her scar and making her self-conscious. It was the first time she'd seen them in almost a year, and they'd grown. They wore clothes she didn't recognize and seemed taller too, their faces a little less round maybe. But you could tell who they were at once: Makaro, Yatago, and Neji. However, it appeared none of them recognized her. Akemichi Makaro stepped around her and kept walking, preoccupied telling Yatsuko about a ball that had ended up in the gutters of the Okage Tower. Hyuga Neji gave a short nod in passing, as if Haruhi was a random stranger, like they hadn't spent 3 years in fierce rivalry. She held his gaze, willing her rival to put the pieces together. "Hey, runner-up! It's me, the Uchiha! Your worst nightmare! And I'm coming for what's mine!" Maybe Haruhi would have more luck if she actually said that aloud, but she didn't think she had to. She'd taken for granted he would recognize her. Surely a stuck-up Hyuga boasting all-seeing eyes couldn't be so blind. Though maybe her hard stare had the opposite effect. Maybe it just made Haruhi look like a random weirdo, with her thinner and scar-split face, half-shaved pixie-cut hairstyle and ferocious glaring. Because Neji quickly averted his gaze, speeding up. "What the hell?" Haruhi stared after him, incredulous. The door was about to close when it swung ajar once more, Rock Lee hurrying after the group in such a rush he bumped into her shoulder. "Sorry," he apologized, but with no trace of recognition. For weeks, Haruhi anticipated how the reunion with her classmates might go. She'd wanted to be accepted again, and the fact Shio and Tenten would be there really helped. All the same, she tried to be realistic. It couldn't be the same anymore. Taiko wouldn't be there. Haruhi looked different, and her skills weren't quite back to normal. Not yet. She'd get there though. There was still time. She just needed some help from the academy to catch up. So Haruhi feared smugness from the likes of Neji, expected they'd stare at her scar and worried they'd call her ugly now, that they'd underestimate her, that some of the meaner boys would target her like they did Rock Lee. Somehow though, amongst all Haruhi's worrisome scenarios, she never expected they wouldn't recognize her. Is this what it's like to be a ghost? Did I die after all? Momo had a point. Indifference might be worse than hatred. Haruhi smiled wryly at her own silliness. Foolish. Haruhi hadn't realized she was this forgettable to her classmates. Not known Fumino-sensei had such a low expectation of her capabilities despite her previous scores. Then again, it wouldn't be the only thing she'd missed. It's not like Haruhi caught how disposable she was to Itachi either. It seemed, without the Uchiha clan, Haruhi herself wasn't memorable. Not as an individual. She couldn't even resent it. It was like being angry at the rain for raining. Those who truly cared those who would have seen past the scars and recognized her, those who'd go look for her in the crowd, were worlds away. The only exception was Sasuke. To think, even if Haruhi strayed across Sirius this very second, walked right up to him and waved her hands before his eyes, he'd not know her either. There was one person who recognized her though, but she'd been kept in the loop for months and had known Haruhi would be here today. "Hi Haruhi!" Tenten came out of the classroom. "How did it go?" "Haruhi-chan?" Makoto asked, looking high and low around the corridor as if Haruhi was hiding. "Where?" Neji managed to put 2 and 2 together and get 4. He rolled back around to Haruhi. "Are you blind? She's right there, Makoto-kun," Tenten said, exasperated. "Haruhi?" Makoto shut his mouth so hard his teeth clattered, while the rest goggled at her. Frowning, Neji glanced from her face up to the unorthodox haircut, styled that way in an attempt to make sense of the lopsided mess the hospital left it in. "You've changed. An observant bunch, aren't you?" Haruhi murmured just as the entrance door opened again, a group of younger kids coming through. "Is it really you, Haruhi-chan? I'm very sorry about your face," Rock Lee said sincerely, making every damn student in that hallway turn to stare at her scars. Haruhi had a sudden yearning for the ground to swallow her whole. "Lee!" Tenten shrieked, gaining the attention of those few who weren't already paying attention. Haruhi placed a hand over her cheek, but the scar stretched too long to cover everything. The sad part was, as bad as it looked now, Haruhi knew she was positively glowing pretty compared to the swollen disaster she'd been 6 months ago. She'd actually made an effort before coming today, knowing only too well her future depended on making a good impression. Haruhi needed Fino-no-sensei to see how much she'd improved, instead of focusing on the way her head had once almost been in 2 parts. She didn't have the effortlessly clean-cut, symmetrical face of before, but for now, this was her best. "You don't say that to a girl!" Tenten smacked Lee over the head. "She's got a warrior scar, that's all." "I'm sorry!" Lee exclaimed. "I didn't mean any offense." "It's fine," Haruhi muttered. "It's not." Tenten glared daggers at Lee. "Drop it, Tenten. I'm fine," she stressed. Though she meant well, Tenten was making it a worse spectacle. Lee was only saying what the rest were too polite to say aloud. Well, almost everyone. A group of younger students had lingered to watch the exchange too. Haruhi was pretty sure they were Sasuke's classmates, though her cousin wasn't amongst them now. One of the boys with vivid blonde hair broke off from them, coming all the way up to Haruhi to gawk. Hey, Scar-chan! Scar-chan! The boy said, so hyperactive he'd make Colin Creevy look cool, collected and laid back, pushing his face far too close without an ounce of regard for personal boundaries. Scar-chan? Like he could talk? Haruhi glared at his distinct birthmarks, etched like straight lines into the boy's cheeks, 3 on each side. Well, yeah. The boy blinked, oblivious. Nay, but you gotta tell me, were you in a fight? Cause that looks painful, you know? Tell me, what happened to your face, eh? First tell me what happened to your face, Whiskers. Laughter rippled through the corridor, though not directed at Haruhi, but at the blonde boy. Me? He scowled at the kids laughing at him. I'm not Whiskers. My name is Uzumaki Naruto and I've always had him, but yours aren't like that, Scar-chan. Haruhi's neck prickled, a blue and black blur by the doorway triggering her peripheral vision, and she reacted instinctively. Grabbing the rude boy by the collar of his jacket, she yanked Naruto away. Gah! He squawked, just as Sasuke's fist missed a direct hit to the face, but it grazed Naruto's shoulder and pushed him. Haruhi rolled to Sasuke. Hey, that's not— What the hell? Naruto tried to kick Sasuke, his aim so off he bumped Haruhi's chin instead. Sasuke's eyes bulged alarmingly. Did you kick her? I was gonna kick you, bastards! Naruto bellowed. What's your problem? Shut your mouth, dead lasts. Stop it! But he wouldn't listen to her. There was a scuffle, only tempered from escalating into a full-blown fight because Haruhi was still there, getting in the way. The hallway erupted, some of their classmates backing off with worry, others crowding forwards with interest. What did Naruto do? Get that jerk, Sasuke-kun! Troublesome. Oh, you're going to hit her! Go, go! Woof, woof! Why wasn't Sasuke stopping? Haruhi'd been annoyed too, but even if Naruto was rude, this was an overreaction. Haruhi'd spent the better part of her childhood in petty squabbles and juvenile spars with Sasuke, but the way he'd gone off on Naruto was different. Her cousin maneuvered attacks around Haruhi, and though she remained unhurt, Sasuke managed to knock Naruto on the floor before she got a hold of her cousin's collar, almost strangling him as she pulled him off. This isn't helpful at all! She squeezed herself between them, putting her back to Naruto to push Sasuke away. She tried to talk reason to her usually level-headed cousin, but it was like Sasuke had vacated his body, only some angry wraith left. You're going to get me into tension before I'm even back, Sasuke! He wrenched himself free, his eyes flickered into Sharingan red. Haruhi stared into the ring Tomoe. She wasn't supposed to use her Sharingan, but it never came to that because the bell rang. A sharp ringing filled the corridor, signaling the end of break. With a scoff, Sasuke walked off for his classroom, ending it as quickly as it started. Lunch was over, and Funo-no-sensei came out of the staff room. Move along, everyone to class! Naruto got back to his feet as the crowd broke up, shifting according to which classroom they were heading for. Everyone outside were making their way inside too, pouring in through the only entrance door, blocking Haruhi from leaving. Fed up, Haruhi unhooked the window and pushed the glass open, swinging her legs up onto the sill and jumped out. Whoa, hey, wait! Are you skipping? Naruto called, and Haruhi turned around as he jumped up on the frame too, a smile that promised nothing but mischief splitting his face. What the hell? What about Haruhi's attitude screamed, "Please join me, right now." Leaping from the window only to stumble on the landing, he invited himself to walk with her. Hey, Scar-chan, I didn't mean to kick you, he said quickly. Sorry about that. Haruhi shrugged. It didn't hurt. In fact, it was almost refreshing. Most people have been tiptoeing around Haruhi for almost a year now. But this guy? Naruto was rude, maybe a little stupid, but he wasn't treating her like a patient. Like something broken. Do you know the bastards or something? Or something. What's his problem with me anyway, eh? Honestly, that wasn't about you. She suspected any perceived slight against their family might trigger Sasuke. Eh? Naruto tilted his head. Then I guess it's because he's such a loser. Haruhi glared at him sharply. He's not. And here I thought you were a cool one. Naruto squirmed, but any hint of uncertainty shed off seconds later. Anyway, so what are we gonna do now? Shouldn't you get to class? Nah, it's boring. If I was you, I'd still go. As far as Haruhi was concerned, it was so much better to be bored in class than not being able to attend to begin with. Then why are you skipping, eh? Naruto laughed, sharply and obnoxious, his expression splitting into a wide grin, blue eyes sparkling mischievously in ways that reminded Haruhi of Shisui, though she didn't know why. They looked nothing alike. Nay, Scar-chan, do you want to go paint the Hokage monument with me? What? We can give Lord Second a twirly mustache, a purple one. Unbidden, Haruhi pictured it, and giggled. The sound so foreign to her own ears it made Haruhi jolt to a stop. Not that the blonde noticed. What about Lord First? We can give him some glasses. Naruto suggested. To see across the village better. Then we could give Lord full of warts. Yeah, and then the old man can have lipstick and eyeshadow. Nee, I know where we can get the paint, Naruto said, already in the planning stages. As fun as that sounds, I'm sorry but I can't, Haruhi told him, surprised to find it was true. She was a little sorry to miss that, but she also couldn't risk getting into trouble while trying to convince the academy to let her back in. I've got an important test to train for. Rain check? His smile faltered. Oh, I see. Naruto! Sasuke's academy sensei, Umino Iruka, was leaning out the open window, yelling his lungs out. Don't even think about it, Naruto! Come back here now! Oh no! Iruka-sensei! Naruto panicked. Gotta go, Scar-chan! Why did he keep calling her that? The name's Uchiha Haruhi. Naruto almost tripped over his own feet. Uchiha? Are you related to him? Is the bastard your brother or something? Haruhi snickered. Or something. A second later, Naruto figured his academy teacher was more urgent than nagging about Haruhi's name. Naruto made a fruitless attempt for freedom, yet despite a head start, he got caught by Iruka-sensei before he'd even reached the gates. Protesting and clawing at the ground as Iruka-sensei dragged him towards the door, like a struggling cat being dragged to the vet for vaccination. Look! Why are you singling me out, Iruka-sensei? It's not fair! Uchiha Scar-chan is skipping too, so why can't I? Shaking her head, Haruhi left the academy in much lighter spirits. She'd go train and prepare for the test which would determine the trajectory for the rest of her life. Haruhi would need to eat well, rest, get plenty of fluids and optimize her exercise routine. Sasuke would want to help too, she was sure. She'd been top of the class, a hard worker. She had this. No Uchiha had been rejected from the academy before, and she sure as hell wouldn't be the first. Fail. Haruhi stared at the results scribbled on her evaluation with numbing shock. How? The test had been hard for her, true, not because the level was higher than expected, but because Haruhi herself wasn't what she used to be. Her reactions slower, her body weaker, and her coordination clumsy in ways she'd never had to deal with until Itachi put a katana through her head and months of hospitalization. But she'd given it her all. It turned out, her all wasn't enough. It's not as bad as it looks, Haruhi-chan, Funono-sensei said carefully. You didn't fail by that much, but the part you couldn't keep up with can't be overlooked. Sure, you can read yourself up on what you missed, but taijutsu, conditioning, you're too far behind. And the more dangerous side of this is that you could get hurt, Haruhi-chan. How can you expect to participate in taijutsu when you're still medically required to avoid head injury? I won't get hit! You will, Funono-sensei sighed. The class has moved on to more rigorous taijutsu and sessions with tools. Things get chaotic, and we must consider how risking further injury can set you back. One knock on the head and... He grimaced, his eyes flickering over to Haruhi's scar, maybe imagining it cracking back open. It was hard to argue. How did you go to ninja school, where hand-to-hand combat was a near daily class, and expect to never get hit? Even back when she was top of the class, Haruhi had been hit all the time. It was part of mastering combat. One had to handle pain too. Haruhi knew pain, so much more than before. The real issue was how she wasn't as good at causing pain to others anymore. Funono-sensei opened the nearby drawers, pulling out a few papers. I talked with the others. Even Okage-sama has taken an interest in you, Haruhi-chan. Based on these test scores, medical recommendations, and previous grades, we agree you can't keep up with your old classmates, But there are other options. It took her a moment to understand. I am being held back? You want me to start in another class with an easier workload? Like a lower grade? Yes. Finano-sensei gave her the papers. You will be exempt from combat classes there too for another 2 months, or any class that risks head injury. But the medics are hopeful you will keep the healing rate you've had to now. You might be able to keep up with them. She picked up the papers. They wanted her to repeat a year. Was it really repeating when she hadn't been around for most of the year? Same difference though. And she who once dreamt of being able to graduate early. What would her dad say? The shame and embarrassment was almost overwhelming. But it was still better than being kicked out, right? It's only a year. That is a transfer referral to Uminori Iruka's class. Iruka-sensei? But that meant I'll be Sasuke's classmate? Fuck this. Haruhi hadn't been much for swearing before, not even as a teenaged witch. However, fuck everything about this.